Detroit didn't laugh at Tesla at first, they ignored it. A tiny startup building electric sports cars in a rented warehouse didn't feel like a threat to companies that had survived wars, oil crises, and recessions. Then one day, a red Tesla Roadster silently pulled away from a stoplight in Los Angeles and embarrassed a gas-powered supercar. No engine noise. No smoke. Just instant acceleration. That moment didn't go viral back then, but it sent a quiet shockwave through the American car industry. Because for the first time in a century, someone had broken the rules and gotten away with it. Here's why you should keep watching. This isn't the story you've heard 100 times about Elon Musk, electric cars, or climate change. This is the story of how Tesla rewired how cars are designed, sold, marketed, updated, and even argued about in America. And near the end, there's a decision Tesla made that forced every major automaker in the US to admit something they never wanted to say out loud. Tesla wasn't just a new car company. It was a new way of thinking. Before Tesla, electric cars were a joke. Let's be honest. In the early 2000s, electric car meant golf cart vibes, short range, slow acceleration, weird shapes. Cars you drove because you felt guilty, not because you wanted to. If you lived in a place like Phoenix or Houston, the idea of relying on a battery felt ridiculous. Long highways, hot weather, gas stations everywhere. Electric cars felt like science fair projects. Then Tesla showed up at exactly the wrong time. The mid-2000s as gas prices were climbing. The auto industry was bloated. Detroit was still obsessed with trucks and SUVs, and nobody was asking for an electric sports car. That's what made it dangerous. Tesla didn't start by trying to replace your Camry. They started by going after status. The Roadster wasn't practical. It was expensive. It was rare. It was inconvenient. But it was fast. And fast rewires perception. Suddenly, electric wasn't boring. It was cool. That one shift changed everything. Because once electric became aspirational, the rest of the industry had a problem. By 2012, Tesla did something even more shocking. They launched the Model S, a four-door sedan that could beat a BMW 5 Series in acceleration. A car with a giant touchscreen instead of buttons. A car that felt more like an iPhone than a vehicle. And here's where the American industry started to feel uncomfortable. Tesla wasn't acting like a car company. They weren't releasing yearly facelifts. They weren't advertising during football games. They weren't begging dealers to move inventory. They were shipping software updates. Over the air. In your driveway. One day your car was normal. The next day, it was faster, safer, smarter. No dealership visit. No appointment. That single idea quietly broke a century-old system. Detroit had always sold cars as finished products. Tesla sold them as evolving platforms. And consumers loved it. People in places like Seattle, Austin, and San Francisco started talking about their cars the way they talked about phones. Did you get the update? Have you tried the new feature? That language was new. And once consumers tasted it, they didn't want to go back. But Tesla didn't just change the product. They changed how cars were sold. No dealerships, no haggling. No, let me talk to my manager. You ordered online. You waited. The price was the price. Dealers hated this. Legacy automakers were trapped. Dealerships were powerful, political, protected by law in many states. Tesla went straight to the customer and dared the system to stop them. In some states, they tried. But the idea was already out. Consumers realized something important. Buying a car didn't have to feel miserable. That realization hurt more than any new technology, because it exposed how outdated the old model was. Now let's talk about fear. Because inside Detroit, fear crept in slowly. At first, Tesla was a niche. Then it was overvalued. Then it was unsustainable. But sales kept growing. Charging networks expanded. Superchargers popped up along interstates like I-40 and I-95. Road trips became possible, then normal. And suddenly, electric wasn't a city-only thing anymore. You could drive from Chicago to St. Louis, from Dallas to San Antonio, from LA to Vegas. And that changed the conversation. Tesla also forced America to confront something uncomfortable. How dependent the industry had become on incremental change. New grille, new headlights, same drivetrain, same business. Tesla skipped that. They rewrote the architecture, batteries in the floor, motors at the axles, weight distribution sports cars used to dream about. And they did it without asking permission. Now here's the problem Tesla faced. Scaling is brutal. Making a few thousand cars is one thing. Making hundreds of thousands is war. Factories, supply chains, quality control. Tesla nearly broke multiple times. There were nights during the Model 3 ramp when executives slept on factory floors. Stories came out of chaos, stress, and mistakes, panel gaps, missed deadlines, public criticism. But Tesla survived. And every time they survived, their myth grew. Meanwhile, American automakers watched something terrifying happen. Tesla didn't just survive. They set expectations. Consumers started asking questions. Why can't my car update itself? Why does my dashboard feel 10 years old? Why do I need oil changes? Those questions forced change. Ford announced electric platforms. GM committed to all-electric futures. Not because they suddenly became environmentalists, but because Tesla proved the market existed. And once Wall Street believed electric was the future, the pressure became unbearable. Stock prices told the story. Tesla became worth more than legacy automakers combined at one point. That wasn't about profit. It was about belief. Belief that Tesla understood the future better. And belief is powerful. Now let's talk about culture. Tesla made cars political. That was new. Owning a Tesla became a statement. In some places, it meant tech-forward and progressive. In others, it meant elitist or controversial. But either way, people talked about it. No one argued about a Honda Accord. Tesla turned cars into conversation starters. That alone changed marketing forever. Automakers realized something painful. You can't buy authenticity. Tesla didn't feel corporate. It felt like a movement. Messy, loud, human. And that resonated with younger buyers. Millennials and Gen Z didn't grow up idolizing muscle cars the same way previous generations did. They grew up with smartphones, apps, instant feedback. Tesla spoke their language, even when people hated it. Now here's where the story deepens. Tesla didn't just pressure automakers. They pressured suppliers. Battery companies scaled faster. Charging infrastructure expanded. Entire industries reoriented. States invested in EV incentives. Utilities planned for load changes. Tesla accelerated timelines. Things that were supposed to happen in 2040 suddenly needed to happen by 2025. That's not normal disruption. That's forced evolution. And here's the fear American automakers had to face. They weren't just competing with Tesla. They were competing with a company that didn't care about their rules. No unions initially. No dealer networks. No legacy obligations. Tesla had fewer anchors. That made them fast. Detroit had history. History is heavy. This created an emotional struggle inside the industry. How do you honor the past while surviving the future? Workers worried. Dealers pushed back. Executives hesitated. Tesla didn't have those constraints. They moved. Now, let's explore the turning point. It wasn't a car. It was a sentence. When major automakers started publicly announcing full electric transitions, something changed. The tone shifted. This wasn't maybe someday. This was we have no choice. Tesla had reframed the future. Gas cars weren't the default anymore. They were the legacy option. That psychological shift is massive. Once the future feels inevitable, behavior follows. Investors move. Governments move. Consumers follow. And Tesla became the reference point. Every electric car review compared range to Tesla, software to Tesla, charging to Tesla. Even when Tesla wasn't the best, it was the benchmark. That's power. Here's the climax. Tesla didn't change the American car industry by building electric cars. They changed it by proving the old way wasn't sacred. That you could sell cars without dealerships. That you could update vehicles like software. That performance didn't require gasoline. That a startup could scare giants. Once that illusion broke, the industry could never go back. Detroit didn't lose because Tesla was perfect. They lost because Tesla asked questions no one else dared to ask and forced everyone to answer. Today, the American car industry looks completely different. Electric trucks, software-defined vehicles, direct-to-consumer experiments, over-the-air updates. All of it traces back to Tesla daring to act like the rules were optional, because they were. Tesla didn't just change what Americans drive, they changed what Americans expect. From cars, from companies, from the future. And once expectations change, there's no rewind button. If you want to understand how one traditional American automaker is struggling right now to survive this exact shift, watch the next video on your screen. Subscribe for more real automotive and business stories. And comment below whether Tesla made cars better, or just made everything more complicated.